From beyond the farthest reaches of our galaxy they come. Two brains pulsing with a strange energy. These space brains come to share their love of science fiction movies.
Hi, and welcome to Space Brains, the show where we joy-watch sci-fi movies and then talk about what was good and what was great. I'm Surrey, and this is Mark.
Hiya, it is episode 90, which means it's a classic Space Brains film, and tonight we are looking at science fiction film The Blob. Came out in 1958. In today's episode, we'll look at the ins and outs of narrative, the what we consider to be the good bits of The Blob, and also I seem to be really now thinking of a script, which is weird, sorry, because cameras are on me.
Cameras on you, it's too hard. Okay, well, I suppose that's another thing here. Episode 90 is our experimental video episode.
We are. Got
Hopefully we will get better.
3 cameras on us at once, which is weird.
Indeed.
A lot of eyeballs.
So we've got The Blob, and this is, of course, your spoiler warning. If you've not seen The Blob, I mean, it's been out since 1958. What's your excuse, really?
I don't know what their excuse is.
Go back and watch the film, and then join back in, because we're going to cover all the spoilers.
We are. The Blob was directed by Irvin Yeaworth and written by Kay Linaka and Theodore Simonson, based on a story by Ivan H. Milgate. What was your number one takeaway from The Blob?
My number one takeaway from The Blob is that it had... Oops.
Keep going.
My number one takeaway from The Blob is that it's not a recent phenomenon that kids are played by elderly gentlemen. So, in this one, Steve McQueen plays a 17-year-old teenager, and he does look suitably young, but I have seen 17-year-olds and they don't look like Steve McQueen.
No, they do not look like Steve.
He was 28 playing this one.
Yeah, right.
This does remind me of the OC, where I can't remember the name character or the actor, but it was a 27-year-old.
Yeah, and in Mean Girls, that movie, which has nothing to do with science fiction, I know that she's gone on, she's had a great movie career over the years, and the sci-fi film The Time Traveler's Wife. Her name is just blanking on me right now, but she was 28 when the rest of them were 18. So 3 of the girls were 18 and she was 28. And really, if you look at it, they don't look any different.
Impressive. I mean, you go back to the movie Grease.
Yeah.
They were all meant to be teenagers, but
they were well over.
they were not.
I know.
Teenagers. But anyway, there we go. It's interesting to see in this one here, there's a whole bunch of teens. This is one of the first teen horror films you're going to come across. In fact, we've done Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
We have.
And that was centered primarily on like a doctor, a learned and fully grown human adult, as you get. He's sensible, well respected. When he spoke, people listened.
He was the authoritative figure, wasn't he?
This was not uncommon of movies of the time, of course. The difference, though, of course, with The Blob is we've gone straight to Steve McQueen, who's playing a 17-year-old, and his buddies, who are, yahoos at Drag Race and Carry On. They go to spooky midnight screenings. Spook films, yeah. I don't know what a spooky film is. I forgot what the name of the film was they were screening at the time, but it was kind of a bit generic. It included with Bela Lugosi.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know, that's not actually a film, that's an actor, so I don't know why that would say that, but okay. There you go. So that's my number one takeaway. Geriatrics playing teenagers, not uncommon.
Not uncommon at all. So it's very common for Hollywood to stick the older people into those roles anyway. So, but normally a bit like Mean Girls, the trick can be to put young people, actual teenagers, next to an older person. Dawson's Creek, good example. Again, sort of younger girls, older guys kind of get away with it, apparently.
Yeah, it's a bit... Well, if you look at your basic 17-year-old boy, they're very young looking. I think as adults we forget how very youthful your basic 16, 17-year-olds. I was jumping on the train and commuting with the kids going to TAFE. So they're, 18, 19. Yeah. They finished year 12, but they still just... I was just looking at them going, they just like, anyway, I was really worried there was little kids going to TAFE. And then I saw some photo of me when I was 26. I could have played a teenager. This photo of me looked... Yeah, my wife saw it. I had my first motorbike and she looked at it and she went, "Oh, was that when you were in high school?" She says, "No, that was 6 months before I met you." 27. Yeah, so there you go. Anyway, it's an interesting and storied thing. But let me ask you, was this a movie of hope, or was it a warning, or an experiment?
It is a warning. Be warned, children. Be warned, teenagers. Be warned of your promiscuity, as they might say, or your crimes against humanity, and something like the Blob will come and punish you. It's pretty... I mean, again, we'd have to trace back, and if you're out there listening, you can let us know, when did that become the genre element of sort of horror? Because this film is a horror sci-fi, right? It crosses those boundaries, but straight away people are sinning early in the film and they're punished by the Blob. And that became such a horror trope, doesn't it? That traditional put teenagers out at Camp Crystal and they're having sex and then they get punished by the serial killer. It's the same here. So the Blob is this unknown monster that comes to town from outer space randomly. But if you prod and poke it, it's then unleashed onto us. So it's that good old example of horror writing. And we need to kind of get to the bottom of when did that start? Is it before films? Is it horror stories have always had that? Like humans doing something wrong?
I think there's a certain amount of that. And in the Blob,
repercussions of it,
a lot of the punishment really is more to do with not listening, not paying attention, not following good ideas. So the doctor dies because he doesn't take things seriously. There's people in the movie theatre that don't come out when the horns are played and the sirens go off. So all the teenage kids who are just not listening to what's going on die.
And I mean, that is something that I kind of thought of exactly what you're saying there, that I think in a post-war, again, we talk about this is 1957, 1958, the film came out. I don't know if you noticed, I think, is it the police station? There's literally a calendar that says 1957 on it.
1957, yeah.
Yeah, and...
well, that mean cop was mentioned about being the war,
And I think...
for his war record, whatever that meant.
Yeah, and there was another... one of the fathers or the teacher or something who also was like post-war, and that when they ring all the sirens, there's also the guy with the different hats, and he's like, he was a soldier. I think he's the other one that's a soldier, and but they keep also there's literal characters in here that have been to war, but there's also they mention like monsters. They kind of define monsters 3 or 4 times. Like they say, there's the guy that runs the bar says we get monsters in here all the time.
Yes.
Or we deal with monsters all the time. The police officer says there's no monsters in here, like sarcastically.
Yeah.
And he says like, we have to deal with the real monsters in society, because they're police officers. And although the film is kind of a little bit naive, I think overall, there's those lines and the concept, there's those lines of the monsters are in our society. We don't need a monster like the Blob. We already have monsters. That results in humans in this story. We don't react to someone who is telling us that there is a monster sort of like right underneath your noses. Like, do we believe this teenager? And the characters in here don't. And I think there's a connection there to, the severity maybe of World War II, like the monster being, Nazis and the Germans, at that point in time, and that kind of legacy, because we've talked about this, and you watch a lot of these 1950s films, sci-fi, horror, whatever, and there's so many of them about this kind of invading force, large, powerful monster, and it reminds you of that kind of propaganda.
Well, it was
war,
also coming into that whole Red Panic deal where the Cold War was starting to warm up, as it were, and certainly Invasion of the Body Snatchers has been mentioned, and that was 56, I think it was, a couple of years earlier than this, and that's always been mentioned as being a cautionary tale about communism overtaking, or maybe not necessarily communism specifically, but maybe that concern of that hidden danger consuming people. And this movie, of course, does the same thing. It's got literally this blob that is a red... I know people can now see us chase away the insects. This red blob that is consuming people, and it's, I guess everyone's sort of saying, we've got enough problems as it is without worrying about you and your crazy ideas, you kids.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's the thing, like the idea of, how whether this is an invasion of the body snatch is the same, whether it's like the aftermath of Nazi Germany and that impact on people, and how that sort of, because Nazi, if you go back, we don't have time to talk about it in this podcast, but how they rose up the idea of Nazi over like 15 years, so it's a political willpower. We were just talking earlier about 1984 and controlling the narrative, the Hitler's Nazi party, they took about 15 to 18 years to take control of Germany, to make their ideology the right old ideology, and that included burning books, like change the narrative, and all politicians do it even today, even in a country like Australia. Shock horror. But maybe not to the extremity of burning books. We don't see Australian politicians burning books, have we?
Not literally.
But narrative, telling a narrative.
There have been calls for books to be banned,
and journalists have been raided in this country. The previous federal government raided journalists. Federal police came and raided journalism, and every now and then the journalists are put in their place.
Well, makes it easier when the Prime Minister is most of the ministry.
That's very true. Anyway, we're getting too political. But whether it's that, or as you're saying, the whole concept is more, the warming up of the Cold War. So it's like the warning people, like, this is your warning.
There's something hidden there that's taking over people.
Was American society, for example, where the writers were putting this story together in the script, were they thinking, like the Russians are really building up a military force, we're telling people that, and they're not taking it seriously. And so therefore the blob is a symbol of that? Or was it more, look, we saw it, the history books tell us that if you don't take these warnings seriously, you can get in trouble. So I think even though Steve McQueen was not a teenager, it was great that he was so innocent. He was quite innocent and naive, and along with the rest of the teenagers, and that 1950s society of being a bit sweet and innocent going, and just rocking the boat a little bit. The vagrants.
Oh, those vagrants.
My children are not vagrants, like the father says, and you saw some of that innocence. And even with the police officers, like, trying to deal then towards the end of the film with the blob, like, they didn't really have any big ideas, right? Like, it was pretty small ideas. And so, I just feel like it was a nice metaphor that, either beware of the impending doom, or, like, let's look at our history books and we can tell you that a big, powerful source can take you over. So I feel it's a warning. You may, out there in listening or watching land, if you happen to see this on YouTube, disagree. Do you think it is a hope, warning, or experiment? So is this, as you said, why have you not seen The Blob so far, to the audience? Was this your first viewing of The Blob 1958 we are talking? Sorry.
Well, of course, that is my I haven't seen The Blob until just now. This is my first time watching it.
What?
And the reason is because it is so old. It's genuinely quite difficult to find a way of watching it here in Australia.
Well, I did realise, looking into the credits, because you and I had troubles getting a copy of our hands on this, which surprised me. I realised it's Paramount, so maybe you need the Paramount streaming app.
Paramount Plus or something. Yeah,
so
could
because
be.
it is a Paramount Pictures film, so yeah, I don't have that, and maybe
Yes.
that's where we missed out.
I mean, so this is the first time watching it. I had to watch a version that was presented by a late night horror presenter, as they do. It seems to be an American thing. I haven't really seen the equivalent here in Australia, and it was. I think maybe it is an American cultural thing because he gave me the shits. He just kept jumping in there and like being a dick, and you're like, I'm watching this movie. Just let me watch the movie. It's a good, entertaining movie.
Reminded me a bit of like Cheese TV here, if you know what I mean, like that children's show where they would play, like they play a cartoon show, and it obviously goes to an ad break, and when they come back, the hosts of the Cheese TV would be like, "Oh, let's get back to what the Turtles are up to now, the Power Rangers sort of idea." I think it's like that kind of idea, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think I sort of see where it's coming from, and it was nice that he had a little intro spiel about the film, and so forth. But that aside, I watched the film on my own. My wife was entertaining my kids, watching. What were they watching? Something exciting, and I came out and had to come watch too. So that was good. But it was nice to watch. It's one of these films that you sort of settle into, and you know what you're coming in for. You go, well, it's a 1958 film, so you're not going to have special effects. You're not going to have, well, they had special effects, but you know what I'm talking about. You're not going to have the great whiz-bangery and so forth. There's going to be a lot more...
58's a few years before CGI.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot more character sort of work going on.
And a bit more blocking, as in studio sets.
Yes,
not necessarily
still
on
cameras,
location. Yeah,
still cameras, not a lot of movement and so forth. But yeah, when you do go in and you settle in for that, it's an entertaining film. It's fairly short and sharp,
which is great.
Is good.
Yeah.
I think Invasion Body Snatchers also was fairly straight to it.
Yep.
And I can see that immediately going into it, I thought this is definitely where modern teen horror movies come from. Like I was just watching it, and there's straight up there was they're at make out point, as it were, where
making out,
they're making out, and Steve is trying to convince Janie babe. He's trying to be suave, but he's just not. He's a nerd. Trying to convince Jane that he doesn't bring the girls up here, and I believe him. I couldn't imagine him being cool enough to have a string of babes hanging off his arm. And then they have the drag racing kids, but it's the weird old guy that we know nothing about. He sort of is the first warning. First warning sign is the old codger, and that's very important in teen films to have the old person raving a little bit and die early, and it sort of sets the scene as sets the focus on the kids. So he's like an old guy. He's got experience and wise. No, he just like puts his hand in the blob and then he just mumbles and cries and whimpers for the whole rest of the thing until he's consumed. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Did you notice like even the Doctor and Steve, like both of them were like when he got to the Doctor's like, they'll keep the old timer down for a little bit. I'll just give the old timer something to like sedate him a bit. Like even the Doctor, I'm like, the Doctor's not that much younger than him.
Yeah, you're probably not that much younger, dude. But yeah, so it's got all of those teen horror movies because I watched. I was a teen at one point in my life.
What?
Hard to believe. Now you can sort of see the glory of my lack of hair.
We're ruining the illusion of podcasts, aren't we?
The illusion, because everyone thought that I was such a suave, charming boy.
You're just a teenager.
I'm just a teenager. I could play a teenager.
You could play a teenager with the right makeup.
Yeah, with the right makeup.
Hair.
With hair. And if maybe I was a swimmer, I had just a swimming cap on all the time. But I watched, through the 90s, the Scream is... good one, comparable to this, where the teenagers are in trouble and they're trying to raise the alarm that there's something really bad going on, and the police are inept. Even if they are, caring and interested, they're really kind of dismissive, and it's not until it's the actions of the teenagers which overcome the villain in Scream. And of course in The Blob it's the same deal. We've got this setup where the teenagers are not taken seriously. The cops, even Dave, is, he's sympathetic and he likes to give them the benefit of the doubt.
He
but
does.
ultimately, he's still pretty, you're just a bunch of kids. What are you doing?
Yeah.
And so it was a good experience. I got that sort of nostalgia for those sorts of slasher films. I could see the
for sure.
genesis here. And I was actually reading that the Blob was the B feature for I Married a Creature from Outer Space or something rather. Was the
Yeah, right.
Of course, we've not heard of that again. It was the B feature to that, which means that they'd had a double screening. The first one's sort of the good one, and the second one, I don't know why you put the worst one second, but that's what they did.
I think it's like if you hung around, like at the cinema.
Yeah.
So, if you hung around for you watched the main film and then hung around for the kind of night film
Because you got nothing better to do.
Yeah.
Maybe as the teenagers would do it.
The teenager was hanging around.
But of course, this film here, which centered on the teenage characters as the protagonists, it got all of the teenagers who were then going into drive-in theaters. It got them all in like, whoa, this is fantastic. We're the heroes. It's representation. And as I said, representation matters. This film represented teenagers. There are probably a couple of other films, I don't know them, but this one is renowned for representing teenagers in this sort of film, which also was a subject matter that entertained teenagers.
Yeah. And
it quickly went from B-movie into the main feature slot, as it was shot for 120,000. I guess we'll go into that. 110,000 you've got written there. And they sold it, the rights, for 300,000, as the rights, the distribution.
Yep.
And it went on, $4 million, which was lucky for Steve McQueen because he got $3,000 cash up front. He needed that to pay his. He's an actor. This is one of his first, or maybe
I think
his
it's his first major feature.
Feature.
Yeah.
He had to pay rent and buy food.
Yeah.
And so he got $3,000, but he got 10% of the back.
Ooh.
And they gave it to him because they were like, "This is a B film. It's not going to do jack."
Take it, Steve.
Take it, Steve. It went on for $4 million, and it's still going. So I don't know how long that 10% lasts for, but
I think it's forever really until
Forever.
the copyright ends, really, which is 100 years after the life of someone or whatever. Something or whatever. Those
Something
copyrights.
ridiculous,
I know the Walt Disney thing. 100 years after they die, something like that. But anyway. Yeah, right. I had quite a different viewing experience with this because I have seen this. I have seen this as a child growing up and have seen the subsequent remakes as well.
The 1988 one?
The 1988 one.
That's a decent movie in itself.
The 1988 one is good. That's actually a lot more accessible as well. So if you're interested in watching that, compared to the 58 version. But I've seen this film. Probably this might have been about my third time, but definitely I haven't seen it since my childhood. And I think this really was an introduction to me because it sticks in my mind. When we decided to do this, I was like, it's definitely a classic. And when I started watching this film, within the first 5 minutes, I was like, oh, this is good. This is really solid. It's so fast telling us. I mean, that meteor, so Steve and Jane are making out he wants a bit more, can't quite get it, and the meteor falls out of the sky. I'm like, wow, like that is a tight script writing, right?
straight into it.
By 5 minutes into the film, they're hunting for it, and really by about 10 minutes, the old man stumbling across the road in front of them, and they've got to rush him to hospital. So the Blob has already entered the story. The danger's already been explained. We're seeing the world kind of break down really rapidly. So to me, it was just like such a punch in the face of why this story is so cool. And you sort of said it, like you forgive the fact that it's almost 70 years old, right? And so you do forgive that pretty quickly. And if you're willing to look past that, there's films like this, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the other one, and there's many, many more. If you can forgive that, then you really can see some great writing and then great sort of, incredible sort of other aspects, whether that's acting or like the special effects in here were pretty interesting, as well as how they did that Blob at different points, And then the other thing I think I picked up this time, sorry, and I did want to chuck this by you. You were saying, like the horror story, and I agree. Like you're saying Scream. You can see it's Nightmare on Elm Street, which is another Wes Craven, so maybe there's a connection there anyway. But
bit of Fright Night.
Fright Night, there's Friday the 13th kind of movies, like a lot of that story structure there. But I also thought this was quite similar to Alien.
Alien, yeah. Okay.
Now, I don't mean as in the teenage side of it, the story. I mean the story structure.
Yeah.
And because it has that kind of cat and mouse, like they're looking for the blob, they think it's there, other people go looking for it, other people don't really believe it's serious. You've got a bit of
that is interesting when you say, because Ripley, renowned in the Alien film for being the only sensible one, is said, no, you need to quarantine. And everyone's saying, no, it's not serious.
That's right.
We need to continue on.
And that's what I mean. There's more. That's where I saw the similarity that you had a character. Yeah. First of all, the story structure, like cat and mouse, like the blob's here. No, it's not there. It's here. You know what I mean? Like he's like, oh, it's in the department store, but it was at the cinema. Like, oh, it's going to be. It's going to be here in the doctor's... Oh, no, it's not in that room. You know what I mean? And that reminded me a lot of how in the first Alien film, and we have done that, go back, listen to it if you haven't, how there is that cat and mouse, the aliens above in the chains, and then it's in the vents, and, the cat is there. And I also thought the dog here was like the cat, in Alien,
yes.
So there's that sort of like connection I felt. So it would be interesting, like what Ridley has to say about that inspiration. I'm not sure if that's sort of public, but I could see a lot of connotations, in this sort of viewing, But it's such a fun, horrific kind of film, this film. And it just really stands out when you look at a lot of those, alien lands on the planet and just how rapidly the world deteriorates in the blob. How did this film make you feel?
It was not scary. I think it's supposed to be quite scary.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be terrifying.
And maybe at the time it was a little bit more so, but the opening credit song, the blob.
Yeah, the blob. Which the trivial bit about that, right, is they deliberately made that song that way to lighten it because they were a bit worried that it was too scary.
Yeah.
So they deliberately... Because that song is sort of ridiculous, isn't it? It's like a real sort of...
But it was by
upbeat,
Burt Bacharach.
Bacharach, yeah.
It was a bit of a funny song, so, and I thought that was a bit odd. And,
it is odd.
But, I think it got me interested. Like, I was really interested to see where the story was going and how it would develop and how a 1958 view on teen horror would progress.
Yeah.
And you can definitely see that it's a lot more tame in comparison to more recent stuff. Like you go into but then you look in the 80s. I remember Nightmare on Elm Street was like a real, that was a big horrible horror film. That was really nasty. But I remember watching it again when I was much older. After being a teenager, and I was like, wow, this is really quite tame. Like, really, it's no Saw or Hostel.
Yeah.
It's quite, moderate in its use. It's most of the horror is in it being relatable to people of the time.
Yeah.
As a teenager at the time, and the sorts of high school events and the sorts of people involved at the time was very real. It made it very real to me. But then as an adult, working a job, and I'm watching it, and it's we got mobile phones and things. I was thinking, okay, it's interesting. I like it, but it's not doesn't have the impact. And that's why I got to the blob as well. Was I was watching, going, if I was a teenager of the time, I could definitely see that this would give you anxiety, almost like Don't Look Up.
Yeah,
in Don't Look Up, they
trying to convince
you're getting that these
and...
scientists trying to convince everyone that there's this real danger, and everyone's like, okay, sure, ha 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 ha. Tell us more about this exploding stars. So, well, it won't matter because we'll all be dead. And this one's the blob is, so you played a prank on me last week, and now tell me about this monster that you saw, ha ha ha, whatever, So, I was but I was very keen and very interested in watching it. It's very entertaining still. Particularly because it's so tightly written and paced. Like you get in there and you go through. There's no prolonged piano playing scene with one camera shot for like 5 minutes. You're not sitting there just going, just when is this moving?
Yeah.
So,
and, I mean, I think with that as well, like Steve, isn't this a really clever writing trick that, so we have Steve and Jane and their sort of teenage romance, and then they're thrown into the deep end. So we learn they're good people. They're nice people. They help the old man. So there's a sort of save the cat stuff. But then realistically, we don't. But then he does the racing with his mates and stuff.
Yeah.
So he's still a teenager. Like he's still got those sort of male testosterone.
He's a bit goofy.
He's a bit goofy. Is he a bit nerdy, or does he fit in? Does he not? But then it's also then later as well with then the two dads. Then you kind of learn more about him. So it's good writing. That to me is good writing. There's a good technique there. It's like you don't have to just spill. Oh, Steve is a teenager. Steve has a dad that does this, and he always lies to his dad. You don't have to spell it all out in that first opening scene. There's things that can be kind of kept to the side. So I found that, I thought that was a clever kind of piece of writing in it.
Yeah, it's pretty good. But speaking of writing and clever, what are we doing these days? I mean, we do have a film festival.
Yeah, we should mention that. We're getting quite a few submissions. So it's the second year of the Spacebrains Sci-Fi Film Festival. If you are making a short or feature or even a music clip that fits under this genre, so like The Blob was a horror sci-fi, but clearly sci-fi. An alien lands on the planet and invades. You might be making a film like that, inspired from The Blob. Well, the Spacebrains Film Festival could be a really good match for you to submit your film to.
Yeah,
so,
we've gotten a couple music videos now. One from here in Australia, in Canberra.
Yeah, awesome.
Filmed at Mount Stromlo Observatory. Very nice.
I have no idea what that means, but as you do.
I visited as a school excursion, of course, and later on with my parents, because, we're all nerds in my family.
Why not?
And
look at the skies.
Yes, and there's another one from Russia, which has got some very interesting sort of animation and space learning. It's sort of got a bit of a history of mostly Russian space flight, but that's very interesting in itself.
Yeah, for sure. So if you are a filmmaker or a writer, right now is the time to get cracking, get submitting. We're in the sort of early bird stage. The festival is June 2023. We'll be having more and more details come out about that over the next couple of months. So stay tuned, look at our website, check in the socials. You need to make a film and submit it to Film Freeway. So again, just look for Spacebrains online. If you're following us through here, wherever you're listening to us, you should be able to go back to our website, and that can help you out with all the information. Separate to that, I sort of said last episode, I am starting a little bit cleaning the slate. And interesting, since that, I've actually got a new idea.
Ooh, nice.
And this is something that I've wanted to do, as a goal, and it's been something that's tinkering. My brain or the creative spark has hit me, and it's going to be a low budget feature film. So that's kind of the challenge I've really been thinking probably for about 12 months. And sometimes you hear writers talk about this, but it's something that I've kind of said to myself. Previously, I've written 3 feature films, not with any real rules or restrictions, just to write them, and hopefully put them out there and potentially get them made and all that. Whereas for this one, I'm thinking, what is something that I could make, and what is something that is potentially made with a very low or no budget, but it's going to be a feature film. So, and I've had that bubbling around in my head, not really anything, but suddenly an idea has hit me. It's most likely not sci-fi, and maybe a bit more in the horror sort of genre, but it has come to me, and I've gotten the sort of the bare bones of it, the beats. And so since the last time we recorded, I've got got my beat board up again, and I'm kind of pinning ideas as they come to me. And I've definitely got a very solid first act and know how the story should end. So the last act, but some of the middle bits need a bit more filling out.
Bit of fun and games.
Yeah, a bit more. And there probably is already some fun and games. And this is what's beautiful about the beat board is that every day when I do my morning pages, suddenly you're looking at that beat board and you go, oh, that's another fun and game. And so that's what's great about the beat board is then you can just jot that down on a card, pin it, and guess what? You might not end up using it, or you might. And so, but then you start seeing the board filling in.
Yeah.
And I think also a little bit of the emptiness is that I probably haven't completely formulated, the two main characters either. Like there's still more to them. What I was just saying with Steve and that writer hiding stuff to a bit end, I probably don't 100% know my character inside out yet. But it's exciting because, to be honest, 2 weeks ago I kind of was blank slate.
Oh, that is very good.
Yeah, how about yourself?
I've just about finished mapping out that novel that I was reworking because it was a little bit short and wasn't going the direction I wanted to. Even though I'd actually already plotted it out and all the rest of it, it needed a bit more. So I'm doing much the same things. I've gone through and recorded each chapter as to what they're doing, what the main scenes are, how that relates then to development of story and drive. Like, character A does this because of this, and so this happens. Yeah, and leading on, and I just need to change a couple of the villains around. So there are two villains, like a primary villain and then like a henchman, if you like. But I'm gonna have to have it the other way around because one of the characteristics of the henchman actually better translates as a primary villain.
Right, yeah,
like it's because they have a very personal antagonism with the protagonist. And because they have that, you sort of think, well, they shouldn't be a minor villain because the other guy who is actually the primary villain doesn't have that connection.
Right.
And so that's why I got to the end of my plotting and I looked at it and went, this has ended too soon, but it has tied up all of the story ends. And then I went, oh, that's because this henchman is too close to the main character and the henchman just got trashed, which would normally lead you on then to the big bad, but no one cares about the big bad because I've just lost the only real connection beyond like a fairly superficial, he's doing bad things. Yeah. Oh, who cares?
Yep.
So
yeah, cool.
So it's now I've got that sort of worked out. It's a matter now of how do I transfer these characteristics across, so swap the two villains around from primary to secondary, so that at the point where the henchman dies, I haven't lost the primary connection, and it's a realization that they have only scratched the surface of the story, if you like. Yeah, so that's good. And on top of that, I'm working on an app at the moment. Ooh, it's a little business venture with my son. To make some pocket money. So that'll be exciting. I would flog it and advertise it here, but it'll be pointless because it's very localized to the Mandurah region. And so if when I release it, you go and download it and try and use it, you'll find that you'll just be told that if you're not in Western Australia, in Mandurah, I don't want to know about it. So anyway,
niche, and as Andy J. Pizza would say, the niches get the riches.
Oh yes. Which doesn't work if you pronounce it niches, get the riches.
No, it doesn't work that way. You got to say niches.
Niches get the bitches.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
But I love that. But he does make a really good point. Like that, no matter what in this current sort of digital world, there is actually a lot of value in niching down. Really getting into
it helps
what
that
you do.
We're working for pocket money for my son who's 10, where $50 a month is great. If I was working on something $50 a month for myself, I'd be like, that's really not worth my time.
Yes. I've got to quit.
my rent is many times that per week, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
That's the way it is, because there's certain realities of life. But as a 10-year-old, any money's
really
good money.
That is good money, I reckon.
Yeah.
That is really good money. So anyway, that's great. So yeah, as we said, check out the film festival as well. More details to come. So with The Blob, let's get stuck into some bits and bobs about the plot and really get into some details that happen and then into some of the science that is behind the blob. We'll go into talking a bit about some of the narrative structure, and whilst we're doing that, we'll also divulge some of what we thought about things like symbolism or the camera or editing, acting, and overall kind of beats as we go throughout those main features. As we said before, The Blob was directed by Irvin Yeaworth and written by Kay Linaka and Theodore Simonson, based on a story by Ivan H. Milgate. It was produced by Jack H. Harris, and it did star the one and only Steve McQueen. As you were pointing out before, I think this was his first major kind of film, even though it was kind of a B-grade film anyway, or B feature. Not so much B-grade, sorry, that's not probably right. But it was his first big stepping stone into a Hollywood career. Anetacorseaut, she played Jane. Earl Rove played Lieutenant Dave, and Olin Howland was the old man. And Stephen Chase played Dr. T. Helen. As we said, Paramount, it was basically just filmed and produced in the United States. Had a pretty, I think, like, even in 1958, this is actually quite a small budget of 110,000. Don't know what the inflationary dollar is on that. But maybe that was a few mil. So, in today's dollars, might be a couple of mil. Yes? No? You're not doing the maths in your head?
I am, yeah.
Yeah, a couple of mil probably.
Probably about 10 million.
Yeah. So if in the US, again, like real low budget, good example was Get Out, Jordan Peele's Get Out, which went on and was a huge blockbuster, horror blockbuster again. That was made for the $4 million mark. And that was like him scrimping and scraping and borrowing and begging. And again, in the US, $4 million is, they're probably not really going to do it. That $4 million is going to be about as cheap as it gets in the US. In Australia, very different. We make many, many movies for, $1 million up, even the ones that are properly funded. So, but yeah, in the US, about 4 is the lowest. So if it's 10 million, yeah, it's kind of above that. No, but it's no Passengers where Steve McQueen is getting paid Jennifer Lawrence money of 18 million just to rock up for the movie.
None of us are being paid Jennifer Lawrence money, except for Jennifer Lawrence.
Except for Jennifer Lawrence, yeah. So,
good on you.
Good on you, Jennifer Lawrence. So you keep up that. I hope they keep paying you that way. But it was great that you said Steve kind of did the Tom Cruise. I'll take a tap on it at the end, and it was successful for him.
Yeah, I think it worked out because if the box office was 4 mil compared to 110,000, was that a 40 times increase? That's pretty sweet. And but that does come from the fact that if you've got a relatively small budget, mind you, that would be like a 10 million film becoming like a 400 million film in box office, which does happen. Yeah. There's definitely those ones around, plus they've done that.
I know, I only learnt this not that long ago, was Forrest Gump. They struggled to really get the money up for Forrest Gump, and they got some money, but what ended up happening was Tom Hanks and Robert Zemeckis. Robert Zemeckis is the director. Both of them really well known, big time. Robert Zemeckis is Back to the Future and many other films. But both of them really wanted to make Forrest Gump, so they took massive pay cuts for their salaries to make Forrest Gump, and then that money could go back into the film and actually make the film. But they took a 10% cut of the film from doing that. And Forrest Gump was massive, like a huge box office success.
Unless you're the writer.
Still making... Yeah, no, we've talked about this.
Poor
the writer got screwed.
He took gross points, not net.
Yeah.
Yes, and Hollywood has good accounting practices, apparently.
Yeah. But both Zemeckis and Hanks have done very well out of that. So
nice. So let's get into the story acts. We start off with Act 1, Act 1 is the introduction. We're going to see all the characters. We're going to get some sort of idea of their personalities.
Sure.
We have a saving the cat, as Schneider would say.
Yeah,
which
just
is
a hero moment.
It's usually a moment which says, this is why you should care about the hero.
Yeah.
And it's quite straightforward. There are some films that don't do it as well.
Yeah.
And often you end up liking a secondary character more. Unfortunate, but sometimes you get these show stealers who are just more likable.
Yep.
We get the important point here in Act 1 is the inciting incident, and that's the question that is asked that we want answered in Act 2. It's also tends to be the it tends to be that moment where we know what the film's going to be about, what to expect, the premise, basically. It may not end that way we expect it to end, but it's certainly the way we expect Act 2 to follow through. Hopefully there is a bit of a surprise at the end, which helps us, stay interested. But yeah, and out of this catalyst, we get the hero is driven towards some sort of story. But they're not sure if they're going to be able to do it or how they're going to do it. They invariably choose to continue on and take the challenge.
Yeah. Sometimes trying to solve the catalyst really quickly, and that doesn't work.
No.
So that kind of leads them on. Like, do they continue? Do they keep going?
Yeah, they keep going. And that's an interesting one as well, of course, because when we talk about debate, sometimes there's an obvious debate, which is, what do I do with this information?
Yeah.
Do I, you can often have a scene, particularly say in a horror film, do I run away and hide, or do I warn everyone else and try to escape?
Yes.
And either one can lead into the film depending on the nature of the catalyst. It could imply that we're going to have a bit of a cat and mouse, deadliest game chasey type deal, in which case run and hide will be the choice. Or it could be like Friday the 13th, which is, there's a murder and we all need to get out of here.
Yeah. How do we get out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that lives in Act 2.
It does.
What's covered in Act 2?
So Act 2, once they've made that decision and the story continues, is basically fun and games. I like how Schneider says it's like the trailer. So I really think that's a really important way to understand that as a writer, that in a big chunk of this part of the film now is the audience going, oh yeah, we're in for a good story and I expect this now, and so, if it's a story about, two people driving from Perth to Sydney or New York to LA, it's like, now we're in for that car ride. Now we're in for that.
We're going to have the road trip adventures.
We're on a road trip of some sort, and so that's the fun in games. If it's a sporting story where they've got to climb the mountain of becoming the best team, and they're the ugliest, unfittest, no talent, been in prison, whatever, and they're up against the A grade team with the polished sport uniforms, etc., that we know that they're going to go through that progression. And that's pretty much the fun and game. So whatever the catalyst was, they've decided to come over it, and we're in Act 2, and the fun and games is literally having fun with that catalyst, either trying to resolve it or learn or escape. Maybe it is, again, the cat and mouse, so it's kind of looking at, where's the mouse? Where's the cat? Where's the mouse? Where's the cat? And that's the fun and games of it. And what happens is then you hit a midpoint, so right in the bang in the middle of the story. And quite often this can be a little bit positive or a little bit more negative, or the things are getting worse. I did actually see a film about a week ago that had a positive midpoint, because then the end of the story is not positive. And it reminded me that they can be positive at the midpoints. And so, the midpoint is basically then really it's now time to get serious. That things are real. The decision they made to drive us into Act 2 and they've played with, now we're serious. On a road movie, to go back to that analogy, we're now past the halfway mark of the journey, but there's also not really the ability to go back. Or it doesn't feel like they should go back. So the world has kind of changed on them. And then this leads us into some analogy of story writing, like bad guys close in, the world crumbles, they have a dark night of the soul or just a real bottoming out point. All the things that they tried to do to solve the catalyst is now not working, and they've hit a point of despair, really. And I know there's Robert McKee sort of says that great analogy of like someone on the side of the road, they've missed the job interview, they've got no money on them, no ability to contact someone, and it's raining and the bus comes by and splashes them. And it's just like, it's kind of like the worst possible thing has just happened to this person. And he also gives that analogy, I know, McKee, because then it's like, well, in that point in time, some people would give up. Whereas your character needs to then go light bulb moment of, no, I don't want to give up. I want to try this. And we've done The Matrix, and hopefully it's not too much of a spoiler, but Neo in that moment decides, I have to save Morpheus, which of course is not him being the one, but he's decided to go save the one at that point in the story. And so that drives the Matrix into the third act, because Neo, in their bottoming out moment, like of all the bad things that have been happening, he decides to go save Morpheus. And that's enough to take us into the third act.
Into the third act. And the third act, of course, is the finale. It's not surprising there, is it, really? We're going to hope that we start wrapping up the primary sort of problem that has arisen. And, it's really obvious in some of these films where you've got like a big bad villain. You've got a blob. Yeah. You're going to be going in and confronting this thing.
You've got to kill the blob at some point, right?
So you've got to have a scene where people sort of gather their resources, they sort of band together, or they just, mentally prepare themselves to go out and do this thing. They have the initial confrontation with their problem. It doesn't quite work out. And this is like, because they've just come from this real bottom point where they've got a bit of inspiration, maybe even there was a death involved. Yeah. And then they hit this, they think they've got it. It turns out that they don't. And there's usually, that's a bit there where as the audience, you take that, oh no, gasp. Is this going to be super bad? We kind of know it's probably not, unless, as you said, the midpoint was positive. I hate those movies. You're going along and you get to that midpoint and you go, gee, that was not nice. Oh, this is not going to be a good ending. Oh, no. So, but this is called the reversal. And usually this is where the hero then will have to dig deep. They'll have to remember some other thing that they've learnt through their travels and journeys and their questing. And that's where they will turn it around. They'll demonstrate the learning of the theme, if you like, and finally overcome the obstacle, shall we say, the blob. And this then leads into a final image where we get an ending of something similar to the start, but maybe just a bit different to show you how the world has changed.
Yep.
And that's usually the way that ending goes.
Yes, it does. And that is a really... Sometimes the final image can be a bit of a reversal of the start, or it could be a bit of a repetition of the start. So to sort of show that the world is a little bit different. The Blob's got a bit of a horror ending, doesn't it? And we'll come to that when we get there. And hopefully you sort of picked up on what they did at the end of this film. So this opening image is basically coming in after we have the cheesy credits. And again, please get past those credits. It was the 1950s is what films used to do. They used to play all the credits at the start. We're used to the credits. We're not even used to credits now because of Netflix.
Oddly enough, it was George Lucas with Star Wars that he really bucked the trend of credits at the start because he wanted to maintain the drama of the special particular opening, that crawl and the big Star Destroyer flying in and so on, without having, because you watch these older films where they have like so much at the start, and you sit there just going, I don't care. It's all these things, okay, but it's a different time. This is what they expected.
This is what they expected back in the. Well, this is just what they were delivered back in these days. There was no Netflix where they don't even show you the credits. You know, I remember a few years ago with some film people I knew. They were like, "Are we the only people that stay at the end of the movie to watch the credits?" You know, and I mean, now it's even with Netflix. It goes to that next.
Well, that's
thing,
what those
doesn't it?
Marvel
Like,
have done it because they
chuck
have the little
bits, don't they? Yeah.
the stinger at the end
Yeah.
of every film, and that's a sneaky way of making sure people do see your
Credits.
fabulous credits.
Yeah.
Listen
And
to
they
the
are
songs.
important because we wouldn't have the film without all those credits. So, yeah, it is important. So, The Blob, we basically get shown this really small Pennsylvania town, even though I don't know if we know that at the start, but it is just a little town. And we have Steve and his girlfriend Jane are making out at Lover's Lane. When we see, and they're talking about the stars, aren't they?
Yeah. He says, "I like to come up here because it's a good place to see the stars."
Yeah, out of the light of the.
And she says, "Oh, how often do you come up here?" Because this is the make-out point. And he's like, "Oh, I know. I just meant that it's away from all of the lights. You can see the stars properly."
He definitely wants more out of it, which who can blame him? Because Jane is quite a good-looking young lass,
and he's trying to be cool.
He's trying to be cool,
but he keeps stumbling his words.
Yeah.
He fumbles, and he's trying to be cool, but you can see that actually he's not. He's quite nervous and
I think what's
unprepared.
important for the rest of the story is that she kind of accuses him of coming up there with other girls, and he says he doesn't. He just comes to look at the stars, but it's kind of like he does the Scouts honor thing.
Yeah.
And it's a bit, trivial or jovial or whatever, or a bit kiddie. But I think actually when you think about the rest of the story, he's trying to convince everyone else that there is the blob. And actually in this opening scene, he's trying to convince her that, well, no, he doesn't come up here with lots of girls.
No.
So I think if you think about it in the essence of the story, he's someone that tells the truth. This is what he does.
Well,
he tells the
she
truth.
very quickly says, I think I believe you.
Yeah.
and that was it. So for the rest of the film, she believes him.
She believes him from that point onward, yeah. So that's a really good kind of opening. We learnt a bit about both characters, learnt a bit about Steve, and we see this meteor crash, so they kind of hop in the car and zoom off down the road looking for it. We then cut to the old man,
Creepy old woods cabin.
Howland, and he does the great example of Peter Jackson taking a camera through just some reeds, basically, which I always love because you don't need much to be very effective. It's good acting. He's stumbling around in the dark. He also interesting. He left the dog in the home. I thought that was interesting. I would sort of think you would take the dog, but this is a horror film trope. Like, there's a noise outside. Let's go and investigate by ourselves
without preparation.
And then when he finds it, it's this cute little meteorite rock thing, which again to me was very impressive in terms of the effects.
Oh, I love the way it cracked open.
Yeah.
That looked absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, and it has this blobby thing in the start. And I was kind of, again, this is what horror films make you kind of do. You go, don't touch it.
Yeah.
Just don't touch it. Come on. Are you going to seriously touch it? And he gets a stick, so you think, okay, that's all right. It's a bit human. Prod it with a stick. Poke it. But even that, I'm like, would you really want to poke this thing? It obviously comes from space, and he does poke it and gets it on the stick. And again, the special effects are pretty cool here because, it's on the edge of the stick and it looks like this blobby jelly
stuff. The thing I
stuff.
quite liked is he's holding the stick up.
Yeah.
And, look, you can see this in the camera.
Yeah.
and it's dripping down to his hand. And you're thinking,
it gets close to his hand.
It's not going to be good if he gets this. But then he turns the stick upside down like you would. So he's being careful. He doesn't want it to get on his hand. And this is the horror jump scare bit because that gives you that little relief. You go, okay, he survived this bit. But then it kind of, under its own power, launches up the stick and goes on his hand, which I thought was a good little. It's just the cat moment. You get the tension build up and then it's slight relief and then nope, too bad, gotcha.
Yeah, still gotcha. And he starts screaming and wailing in pain and that. And there's a good... So this is where it's really tight because we've had all that and we're probably only at about 5 minutes, 6 minutes into the film. Steve and Jane are then a bit lost in the dark, so to speak, as in he sort of goes, I think it landed about here, but I can't find them.
Maybe it was further away. Maybe it's like lightning, you think it's close, but it's actually miles away.
That's right. I liked how supportive she was, but I liked she was like, do you want to go back and try another road? So, yeah, she was all into it, which was pretty cool. And so then they're heading off down the road, and this is where the old man now kind of comes screaming and yelling across the road and in front of them.
And this is a teen horror trope as well,
totally.
Isn't it? The stumbling out in, the person who's just been
in the
attacked
dark
by the killer.
Yeah.
They stumble out in front of the teens driving the cars and go, "Arr!" And to yourself, you're going, nah, keep going.
Just keep driving.
Don't stop.
Yeah.
Because whatever's got him is out there still. And sure enough, they go and they help him into the car.
Yeah, and he's kind of they show you the hand a little bit, and it's at this point in time, it's kind of just a bit blobby over a bit of his hand.
It looks like he's got a glove on, basically.
Yeah, and anyway, he hops in and they rush him to the doctor. When they get to the doctor, and then they did a nice cut here because it actually... I think they get him in the car, and does Steve say, "I hope the doctor's still in town," right? And it cuts to then the doctor's on the phone saying, "Right, I'm leaving town for 2 days."
It's time to leave.
Look after the place and make sure you lock up, kind of thing. And so again, it's that sort of time clock, isn't it?
If anyone comes in here with a weird alien creature on their hand, tell them I'm away.
Yeah, that's right. So it's kind of, again, as an audience, you're like, is he going to make it there?
It is interesting because he urges his car on, like he's going, come on. That was a rather flat line, that one, I felt, because he could have honked his horn a couple of times. That made his car go faster, which is, I didn't know that's what happened, but I've been doing it wrong, it seems. I only honk my horn when I'm coming to a stop.
And I think he's doing about 55 miles an hour, and then you see it accelerates to about 65 miles an hour. So, I mean, it's going reasonably fast, isn't it?
Yeah, 100K.
It's about 100K. So,
and then he passes
the other mates or whatever.
Like, the other guys go, oh, no, he didn't just do that,
Who's this cowboy?
Yeah.
So we get introduced to this other sort of bunch of teenagers that don't like the fact that, Steve has overtaken them and raced them. And anyway, so they get down to the doctor, and the doctor's just turning off his light and leaving the house. Loved that light, like that light on the side of the building that said Dr. Helen.
Helen?
Helen, Dr. Helen. Dr. T. Helen on the side of the thing. And
Dr. T.
Yeah.
That's when Mr. T.
Mr. T.
He didn't spend 9 years in medical school to be called Mr. T.
No, Dr. T, boy.
Dr. T.
Anyway, and they rush him up, and this is where, he's got his hand all bandaged, and all right, he's been bitten by something, some sort of animal. Okay, I'll bring him in. Brings him in. Puts him on the table. He's wailing and screaming. I loved his hair as well. Like his hair was like Doc Holliday, like it was all over the place.
Doc Brown,
sorry, yes. Not Dr. Holliday. Doc Brown was really wild and unruly, and he's wailing and not in a good state. And the doctor's like, well, I'll give the old timer
a bit of a look over.
I was loving the language in this film as well. It's it's English apparently, like compared to our current language. Lay him down. He asked Steve what happened. He said, well, I don't know. He's just kind of, this old timer's run out in front of the car. He's got something on his hand. And this is where he unwraps the hand. And now instead of it just being like a glove, his hand's kind of disappearing a bit into the blob.
It looks like a big jelly hand.
Yeah,
now.
like the hand is that you can sort of see through the translucentness of the blob, and you can see the hand inside, but it doesn't look like a human hand anymore.
No, and the blob is becoming. It was quite clear now; it's becoming a little bit redder.
Yeah,
Ooh, gory.
It's creepy. So the doc sort of wraps him up, puts a blanket on top of him. Which, look, this is great horror. Sci-fi techniques here this is where also it reminded me of Alien. Sorry, that not everything was on display.
No,
right? Like there was bits. Alien is so good because, and I think you might have even talked about when we did it. Like alien's only in it about 10% of the film, right? Like the alien creature,
Yeah, you barely see it.
you barely see it. And I was thinking that with the blob, like especially in this probably the first half of the film, you barely actually see the blob. Like it's just little tiny snippets. Which is
mean
good.
it's there.
It's there. Like the character's there.
It's under the cloth on the
It's just not
bed.
shown to us. It's implied it's there. It's under the wrapping. It's in it. It's under his hand wrapped up. It's so it was on the stick and it's not there. So it's sort of like there but not there. Love it. Really good writing, I reckon. So to me, that was kind of basically when the old man came out. The catalyst. That was the catalyst.
I quite liked also. You've got a bit of a theme stated, I suppose. I also thought part of that catalyst, other than the old man coming in, is because so far, from the point of view of as an audience member, what is this movie going to be about? What am I expecting from this? So far, I'm going, okay, there's this thing. Okay, that's spooky, whatever. But then the doc takes a look at it and says, whatever it is, we have to kill it.
Yeah.
We have to... Actually, my notes are now covered by my studio software. But anyway, he definitely says something along the lines of, we need to figure out what this is and we need to kill it.
Yeah.
And then I went, okay, that's the... Now I know that's what this story is going to be. He's going to be trying to figure this out and he's going to kill it. And then they go back and the doc says, go search.
Yep.
Go up there and find out if you can find out what happened. Because I suppose the doctor needs more. He doesn't know what the hell's going on. He's opened up books and he's trying to read stuff. And they nick off. Or they go out. Anyway, they try to nick off, but they bump into their friends who are hanging on the car. And I thought this was going to be a dangerous scene, but it's kind of not, because it turns out they sort of know each other.
They do. They're friends.
And they seem to have a slight sort of rivalry, as it were, but not a sinister one, not a bully type of relationship here. Just kind of teens being silly buggers.
Yep.
Yeah, and
they do a reverse. Steve says, well, why don't we do the reverse race? Kind of looks in the rear
I could beat you
mirror.
backwards.
Yeah, it looks in the rear view mirror at the lights down the end of the street or whatever.
Yeah.
And he does the race, and of course goes past Sergeant or Lieutenant Dave, who then pulls him over. And I did like how Steve McQueen interacts with Dave here.
Oh, yes.
There's a real sort of kiddie suddenly performance that he brings out. Like he almost puts on a bit of a like he is a child. Like he's a child behind the car. Like it's hard to put your fingers on it, but this
gets a bit goofy and sort of nervous
and goofiness and childlike, and he tries to kind of crack a really silly joke. And I found that scene an interesting acting scene. Like I thought it was a different delivery. It is interesting, but isn't it? Because Jane says nothing. She's not addressed by the police officer. Yes. I think there was a bit of 1950s gender.
She just sits there and waiting for it to finish.
Waiting for it. I'm just here to sort of look pretty, kind of thing. But not the policeman doesn't even look at her, doesn't blame her, doesn't talk to her. Like it's the whole sort of example. Personally, I think it might be interesting to throw in there if the police... Because so many of these 50s, it's like the police officers are really just nice. And Dave ends up being... There's a reason the way Dave's a bit of a supporter. But I did think it would be interesting from a writing point of view if that police officer was just a really nasty police officer. Like he whacked the bonnet of the car with his stick. He got Steve to get out,
It could have been...
But it's just a little bit bring in modern day policing, but in the 50s, if that makes sense. That would be really interesting.
Standing off hand on the guns, get out of the car, keep your hands where I can see them.
Yeah, still have it look like the 1950s, but just bringing in modern day policing would be quite interesting. So, but anyway, it's not the point of the blob, but
no, it's also a small. It's
small
reinforcing
town,
the small townness where he knows the police lieutenant, and the lieutenant knows who Steve is because he knows his dad. His dad owns a local store.
Yeah, they know each other and they all know. And, so he lets him go this time and with a warning sort of thing. And the mates, they kind of catch up to the mates. And what I liked there was because it had been rivalry between those mates. Suddenly it was like, oh, what did you say? Did you get in trouble, Dave?
Hey, what's
it was only Dave. We're told it was Dave, not Bert. Bert would have given you a fine or whatever.
Yeah. And then they tell a funny story about how they pushed Bert out in a prank that they were pulling, so it made it. That was quite a funny story.
Yeah.
That would be quite funny, and I can see why Bert would be a bit annoyed by being caught out like that.
And I think the whole point of that was teenage shenanigans. They were all teenagers just being shenanigans,
Yeah, so they didn't have a serious life.
They'd done the race, which was against the law. Police pulled over. Steve's kind of tried to play some sort of weird, childish, foolish Gambino kind of style thing, got away with it. And then they're like, oh, you got away with it. They're like, ha, ha, ha. We got away with pushing the law. But it's not like they've done anything super bad either.
No, they weren't even speeding dealers.
And then to show that they're good, they're following it up by, the docs told us to go and investigate, and they go investigate. If they're real vagrants, they'd be like, oh no, screw you, Doc. Let's steal Doc's car and take off and go burn this old man's shack.
I suppose it depends on how delinquent these guys get.
But they don't. They actually literally, let's go looking
they do mention they want to go to the spook show.
The spook show,
yeah.
Oh, you can do that later.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Sure.
Let's go to the middle of the bush.
That'd be weird. Could you? I couldn't imagine the doctor telling me to go check out what happened. I need to know what happened. I'm like,
what, back out there?
That's kind of not my job. I brought the guy down here as a favor. This is why I don't help people. I brought him down here for medical help, and now, how?
But I guess, you just said, small town.
You didn't know
we don't have the resources. Just go check out. You might have a family member that's also sick, been infected by another bit of the blob.
Yeah. Anyway, so they go on up there, and they do a bit of a search around. They get the dog, and of course Jane loves the dog, and it's a cute, adorable little dog. And they find the cracked open meteor, which they sort of pick up, which I don't know that I'd be picking up. It'd probably burn you to death, but they mentioned it was hot, but it was okay. And
it was that kind of acting,
a bit
you like this? It's from space. Hot potato, hot potato, hot potato.
Yeah, and they don't find out much more except they go, well, this must have been where this thing came from.
Yeah.
Which I suppose, as a story element, as part of the narrative, it was necessary for them to go up there and see that this was from outer space. So this is not a normal thing. No ordinary explanation is going to be good enough. Mm-hmm. And so when they do come across, when he sees the doc, fall down in his house, he's already thinking, okay, this is for something more serious.
Yeah.
Had they not gone up there, had we not introduced the fact that this was from outer space, then the characters could have easily dismissed, the doc's fallen over. Oh, okay. I'll, go in and have a look and, oh, no, I can't see him. Oh, okay. Just not a problem. So I think that's what we got out of this is we also got his friends along so that later on we could get some help.
Yeah.
Because again, had they not been up there to see an asteroid come down, then you're trying to convince them there's a monster. They'll be like the cops. They'll be like, what you talking about?
Whereas they kind of get there's some sort of mystery here.
Yeah.
And to me, that's where we get this. It's here that there's a bit of a break into two because, they know, okay, well, we've picked up this random old guy. He's got something on his hand. It's come from the meteor. It's alien of some form. This is serious, and so now it's like, what, and again, I think here this is where characters could decide. Steve could decide, well, let's get the hell away from this. Let's run away from it or run to it. And so it's running to, he wants to help. So we'll go back to the doc and tell him this information.
Yeah.
And so from there, to me, this is an act two. So then back at the doc, this is really great with that time going. His nurse rocks up and he thanks her for coming in, over time. I presume it's Saturday night or Friday night. She was probably on the wines by now. If wine was like that back in the 50s, I don't think they did. Wine didn't exist then, right? Now, probably on the beers.
Gin.
And anyway, so she goes, go check on the patient, and he does warn her, this thing is attached to him, don't touch it. So it's a nice little, warning reminder. And of course, she comes to the bed, and we see that the shot kind of reveals there's no human on the bed.
Oh, no.
And very rapidly, she tells the doc, and he's like, what? And he looks, and suddenly this blob is not little. It's probably now the size of a beanbag, something like that. And it's on the floor, and it's kind of rocking. And
was it John Carpenter's Dark Star?
Yeah.
Was a beanbag once?
Well, it did say that the one of the things they used for this was a weather balloon. So I don't know if that was
a tie-in back to the explanation for UFOs.
Yeah. So they used balloons and weather. I don't know if the weather balloon was maybe when it was a little bit bigger, but anyway, they used the balloons, and then they used clay and slime things. But to me, when I saw this, I sort of thought, oh yeah, that might be a weather balloon. I don't know. It kind of was about the size of a beanbag, and it kind of moves a bit. Rocks, moves around a little bit. The nurse screams and all that, and I like it. Like you said, the doctor's like, right, get the hydrochloric acid.
Yes.
And she knows where it is. She grabs it, and he's keeping her calm. He's like, just throw it on it. Don't get it on your skin. And throws it, and the blob just absorbs it.
Yeah, it doesn't care.
No, it probably makes him
for
feel
some
quite
reason,
good.
Yeah, and then it gets grumpy and it eats the nurse. And this frightens Doc, and the Doc goes, I'm going to get my gun. Which I'm thinking, well, I'm not sure what your gun's going to do to a blob, but sure. Why not?
I think you would reach for the gun.
Why does this doctor have a gun rack on his wall, unsecured?
To the US, it's the 1950s.
Yeah,
I think the doc should have
He's
it.
got a couple of shotguns just on his office wall. I mean, nicely they're not loaded. He did have to go into the cupboard to get the gun.
I think it was reasonable.
The gun balls? Is that what they're called? We're in Australia. We don't know what bullets are.
No, we don't.
Bullets, that's what they are. Yeah.
And then we sort of, Steve and that rock back. So Steve and Jane come back to the dock, and the house is in darkness.
It's all dark, yeah.
And we know, that he's just been tussling with the blob, and that, so it probably hasn't resolved very well. Steve kind of knocks on the door. No one answers. They do say, maybe he's taken the patient to a hospital, which makes sense. Let's check on his car. Steve goes around the back, and he suddenly sees the doctor up against the office window, and then it's really done, again, this is what I mean by Aliens, very similar.
Yeah.
Good horror films, you only see a quick flash, and it kind of looks like he's being ripped away from the window.
Yeah, it's pretty.
You don't really know what's going on.
Yeah, he's struggling though. You know that he drags the blinds down with him or something. Yeah.
And so Steve runs back, and we've got to go to the police or tell the police because Doc's been killed, kind of thing.
And this has become a staple in horror films, like teen horror films in particular. If you look at the more psychological horror and thriller monster films, even that are aimed at older audiences, they generally don't have this scene as much, where it's like, quick, tell the police, tell the authorities. The authorities will save us, and the authorities never save you. Like, they don't. They're like, that's sort of part of the horror of the horror film, is this breakdown of social norms. You believe that if someone was trying to break into my house, I would call the police, and hopefully they'd get here in time, and they'd either capture the perpetrator or scare them off. At the very least, scare them off as the police car comes up. They go, "Ooh, we've got to get out of here."
Yeah.
And so you'll be safe. So it's a not unreasonable tactic to take. But when you've got an alien blob monster that absorbs people, you call the police, and they can't do jack. And that sort of heightens that feeling of unease, because you go, well, that was sort of the expected thing. Like, what do we do now? What's our next step? How do we escalate this? And he does. He calls Dave. Luckily, he gets Dave and not Bert. And we get this. There's that third character in there who doesn't seem to play much of a role in this film. I found that a bit odd, because we've been introduced to the fact that he plays chess.
Yeah, chess.
And so I'm thinking, he's going to be the smart one. He's going to have he's going to say, well, in chess, he's got us, in check. We've got to make a smart move now, or it's going to be game over. Like some sort of playing on words or something like that, where his, chess playing his chess playing had nothing to do with this, except maybe it showed that he wasn't a very active police officer. Yeah.
And I mean, maybe it was just showing the laziness or the remoteness of the town a little bit, you know, like
the fact that
there's not really normally,
during the night shift you just kind of play chess.
Yeah, there's not really much to do. Maybe that was the point, but yeah, there was a lot about that character with not much development from there. Yeah, so they do. Dave does come down to check on the doctor.
They do come check it out.
And they sort of discover the house. Dave's a bit suspicious. And is it Bert as the other cop? Or is it, yeah.
Bert, he's continually
Jim
sort of
Bert.
saying, this is a prank. They're trying to prank us because of my war record. It's like, well, we don't care about your war record, mate. I don't understand what that is. Did you have a bad war record? I don't get it.
Yeah. Anyway, so they kind of scope out and they find that the office is a bit trashed and they put it down to probably vandals and it was locked from the inside. There's no body.
Oh, isn't that a great horror thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it
was locked from the inside.
Yeah, and then and then he has to smash the window to get in. So it's like, but then there's no body.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, what's happened here? You know, it's only vandalism. But Dave wants to follow it up. Dave seems, he's
I think there was enough there to be suspicious, but he's figuring it can wait till the morning.
That's right.
Like it's
late at night. We don't need
doctor's not, as far as they know, because old Mrs. Pepper Potts or whatever her name comes in and sits there and just totally discredits everything the youngsters say.
Starts touching everything as well.
She's going, no. He's just gone off on his 2-day sabbatical medical conference, which everyone goes to conferences in American movies and things. There's constantly sales conferences and things. How many movies are there based around someone going to a conference? I've been to one conference in my life and one film festival. No, I've been to several film festivals, but she basically trashes their story and gives this really plausible thing where, I know it would have been vandals, the kids came in here, mess this up, the doctor's gone. And Dave is still kind of, we can figure this out in the morning. Let's just go have a good night's sleep and worry about it later.
The dads are called down.
The dads. And don't they look like dads?
They look like dads. You and I don't really look like those guys.
No, but we haven't been through a world war, so I suspect they had a harder life.
Yeah, I think they had. They looked like dads, and Jane's dad was not impressed that she was. My daughter's down at the police station.
Well, he's the school principal.
Yeah, so he was not impressed, and Steve tries to plead a little bit with his dad that I'm telling the truth. I saw this.
Well, I think Steve's dad's a little bit cooler.
Yeah. And Steve's dad says, well, look, Dave, the thing is he doesn't normally lie. And I mean, as a parent, we know this. Your children do go through phases that maybe they're a bit into lying and then they're not. So, I mean, at Steve's age, he shouldn't be lying. But, if he's a teenager, supposedly a teenager, it's like, if he doesn't, he's not, we know as well as the audience that he's not a liar. That's the whole point. And so the dad's would be like, and Dave's like, well, look, let's just come back to it in the morning, guys, come on.
Yeah, so they send the kids home, basically. Yeah. And, of course, the friends have all gone to the midnight spook show screening. Yeah. And so Jane and Steve head off the home, and Jane immediately pops out of bed and comes down, and her little brother, Davey.
Little Davey.
Another Dave. Yeah, it's like these great names,
Classic.
Really sort of 57 names, I suppose. Who wants to guard her, and he talks like a little boy. We all know little boys talk like this.
Oh, I do. That's a bit creepy, actually. You know that very well.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, funny enough, my son's going through a phase where he has this tendency of putting this little baby voice on.
Right.
And it's like, I think it's kind of like an in thing with his one of his friends. He and his friend, one of them, they sort of do these little characters, if you like. It's just one of the things he does. But anyway, And she says, no, you got to guard mum and dad, and I'll bring you back a puppy. Just mum and dad will go, you brought a puppy? Yeah. What the hell, man?
You could have promised him a lollipop. He would have done the same thing.
you want to just, you're making pancakes in the morning. Whatever. So she runs off, and immediately we get Steve, likewise, sneaks out, and they bump into each other downstairs, which is really quite cute that they're both concerned and interested, and they open up the garage, and their cars are really tightly packed in. So I thought tightly packed garages was a relatively modern thing, but it turns out no.
No, it's been around for a while.
So I've got to do that whole thing where I sneak past the handlebar of the bike and I got to suck my guts in and kind of push it a little bit extra to scoot past to get to my door. And if the bikes aren't arranged just such a right way, I can't open my car door. And then, of course, on the other side of the car is the other car, and there's just so many little dings on on the car door. It's like, oh, kids, I've just given up. It's not worth it.
It's not worth it.
It's not that good a car anyway. It's not like it's a BMW or something. It's
I'm the same. I've given up on the dings. I think that was like the first couple of years. It's like, oh, no, stop. Now it's just like,
it's just like, it's
another one adds character.
It doesn't cause that much problem. But
who knows, a blob might swallow it one day.
Yeah, and they roll the car out and jump
Get
in.
it rolling.
And then they debate what they're going to do, really.
Yeah, and to me, this is the midpoint because and they're kind of, because Steve's like, well, no one really believes me.
No.
What should we do? We the logical answer is go to the police, go to the authorities, but they don't believe us. No, our parents don't believe us.
And Steve even starts questioning himself.
He does. He starts questioning
himself. What did you see? And he's like, I'm not really sure.
I like that. To me, this is the midpoint. Jane makes him retell all the things that he's experienced.
Yeah.
And he goes through it all, and he does. He even questions the fact that, well, the doctor was definitely distressed, and he pulled the blinds down, but I didn't see what happened to him, but he was there, but then he wasn't there, So, but Jane supports him. She's and actually prompts him and says, well, if we don't have any logical support, where can we get support? And he's like, oh, the boys, the spooks. The spook show, the Midnight Spooks.
But they drive past and find the doggy.
Yeah, they do that first, and to me that's the midpoint because it's that point of, no one's going to help us. Oh, but hang on, who would help us? Oh, the boys. Let's go get the boys. Let's gather a bit of a team and reconsider this. And then on the way, that's when they notice the dog at the department store. Yeah,
and they go in and they get trapped. And we don't notice it at the time because we think it's the dog that distracted the blob. But it's trying to get into the meat locker. And in fact, I think the remake has very much the same scene where they're in the meat locker.
Yeah.
There's a few newer scenes, and it's a little bit, as you said, they've cranked up the gore and violence just a little bit. Like there's a great scene in the remake where the guy sees a gurgling in the plug. This turned my stomach a bit as a kid watching this, and he sees this blob just shoots out, grabs him, and then pulls him through. It's a little plug. What that must be about 5, 8, 10 centimeters across at best, and your head's not going to normally pass through that unless it gets crushed and dissolved by a blob. It was quite horrifying.
Yeah, it was horrifying.
It's good, but they do go to the spook show. And of course, that's where we do get, they convince them to come out. But we know now that the blob is in the back as well because they get them to leave, but we see the projectionist is walking around, and that's where the blob is.
So we see that, and then it cuts to they decide to warn everyone and get everyone involved. And there is a couple of funny moments in this. There's one couple go to a rich person's party house, and they kind of joke about it. They also, two of the guys in the bush come across like a couple making out, and it's just like, oh.
Ooh, this is interesting because in modern day, you would have said that. So there were a couple, a guy and a girl went to the party. And they were obviously high.
Yeah.
But then it's two guys without girlfriends going off together. And you're going, that's a bit of gay coding, isn't it? Like, in 57, was that the case? Or is this my modern interpretation where...
Yeah, well, those two guys didn't have
sweet-looking boys without girls, they're off together, and it's the couples who are off together.
Yeah.
And they go and they reveal like a guy and a girl kissing, and these two guys are sort of like, ha 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 ha.
Yeah.
Perhaps you just, I
got nothing to worry about here. We don't even enjoy the opposite sex.
I'm gonna say that it's probably most likely my modern interpretation of the scene.
Yeah.
And it's probably more like just, well, And I think it's fortunate and unfortunate.
Yeah.
Because it's good in that I'm considering, same-sex relationships. But it's also unfortunate that you sort of lose this ability for there to be, in films, just two people...
It's two friends.
Of either gender, who they're just good friends.
Yeah.
There's nothing more to it. Either male, females who just happen to be good friends, or two men or two women who are good friends. And nowadays, there's always got to be some sort of a coupling. But anyway.
It does. We go forward in time and they are trying to convince the town. So they make this big ruckus, horns.
I don't know whether it's siren.
I don't know whether
the air raid sirens. The dude comes out and he puts his helmet on. He says, "It's an air raid. I'm going to have to get my helmet on and a civil defence." And then the fire engine's, hang on, because he's also a fire marshal warden or something. So he pulls out and goes, "I don't know which one to wear."
So the town conveys and Steve tries to convince them and they're not convinced and Bert's bloody pissed off, I tell you what. He's not happy. He's not impressed with these teenagers. The fire department rock up. They're not very impressed. And then Dave...
the fire department.
But then fireys are kind of like...
They're a bit weird. Not to mention the fact that there's a fire burst breaks out. And how are we going to deal with it? I don't know. How
it's only going to last about 10 minutes, don't worry.
It's like... This fireman asks the policeman how to put it out. You're the expert, mate.
Mate, I'm just an actor in a fireman's uniform. I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah, no, that's...
I'm not a fireman, but I played one in a movie.
The fireman did seem a bit... you could almost imagine The Simpsons or something, couldn't you? They just were very... ill-formed.
They were cash.
Yeah, very casual about everything. But anyway, Steve kind of is trying to do his thing, and Dave does step forward and goes, "You know what? Yeah." And I think Steve say something like, "Look, am I terrified or am I laughing?" And Dave kind of takes that as the sign. Okay, yep, let's everyone else go home. He sends everyone else home. We're going to get to the bottom of this. Fireys, turn on your lights. Let's have a look inside the, inside the department store. And with that, what's his name? The police
and this is kind of
sergeant.
This is kind of a bit of the bad guys closing in, really, isn't it? Because it's like, so everyone's come to witness this, and this is sort of a moment that'll make or break.
That's right.
And of course,
Jim lights up the place inside. He's already gone through the place. Yeah. And he's like, nothing in here, boys.
Nothing.
This guy's a bloody still.
Looked all through there's nothing. Except I noticed all the Winnie Blues are gone out of the smokes case.
Back in the war, us boys, you're whinging about a little monster. This is the thing I said earlier tonight. Like, this. I think this is where he says we deal with real monsters. Yeah. And I said there was that other line with the barman a little bit earlier than this, where there's plenty of monsters in here normally. So the monsters are humans. We don't worry about whatever the hell you're trying to prank us as a teenager. You're wasting everyone's time, sort of thing, is Jim's thing. And then what's great here is that sort of turnaround is that as we knew the audience, a bit Hitchcockian, is that we knew the blob wasn't in the department store, which would make Steve's plan fail. Yeah. But we knew it was with the projectionist. At the same time, we knew at some time the truth was going to reveal itself, and that's what happens. We kind of cut back to the cinema, and I like this there's a little nod here of the projectionist. You'd imagine a projectionist should be really into films, and he's reading a book.
Yeah, he's reading a book. He's not paying attention at all.
Again, if you go back to the 50s, cinema was a growing medium. Books were the purest. It's kind of like now the other. We've got. You might be into films and not into streaming. It's the purest kind of thing.
Yes, you've got the Laserdisc edition.
Yeah, So the projectionist, of course, is reading a book and he gets squished. And I love how then the blob came out of those little projection windows.
Yeah.
And, everyone's laughing and scared of the movie that's going on, the spooky thing. And you just see it oozing through those 3 or 4 windows.
And everyone looks at the screen and goes, "Oh, what
What's going on here? Yeah.
Because then you can just sort of see the blob being projected on the screen.
And with that, they all come running and screaming and out of the building. So,
and I think this is one of the scenes used to promote the blob.
Yeah, probably.
And I do like the meta use of a cinema that's showing a horror film where everyone inside is in danger.
Yeah.
And being, having to come screaming out. Because you could imagine if you're sitting in a cinema watching this film, maybe that's giving you a bit of connection. You're feeling, oh, hang on, we're in a cinema watching a horror film.
And again, how many sort of horror films do that, where they show you the films that are being screened at a cinema?
Yes.
And even Stranger Things did it. So it's such a trope. Again, I don't know if this is the Blob might have been even replicating that off a different movie, but small town cinema, and they write up, there's a homage to another horror film or something that we might be connecting this story to, they all come running, trampling, screaming out. I think it's a pretty creepy scene. This is where Dave and Jim see this crowd running and screaming, so they have to take it serious. Dave runs in first. I liked that there was such a scramble here that even the cops found it hard to get past the crowd.
Yeah.
They really were diving through that crowd. And Dave goes in and just bang, bang, fires off the shotgun a few times and comes back out, and he says to Jim, you don't want to go in there. It's the ugliest thing I've ever seen. And I think also the point is, like you said earlier, with the doctor firing his gun, it's like, yeah, but that's what these guys would try first up, because a gun takes things down.
If you're carrying a gun and it's there, you may as well give it a shot. Why not?
Yeah, but I think it's just, it's like if it was a wild bear, they would just shoot it and it would take it down, or an elephant, or so it's just the natural thing. I don't own a gun. I've never fired a gun, but I think that would be the natural thing. If you saw this monster, you would go, well, yeah, bullets kill things.
It's worth a shot. I mean, why not? Because you never know. What if it did work?
That's right.
What if it did stop and you go, oh, okay, that's not so bad.
So now the Blob is like the size of a cinema, I suppose, because it's been growing.
I assume it's been eating a few people. It ate the mechanic.
Yeah.
And again, the mechanic got punished.
Yeah, he did.
Because
he was going to go up and have a roaring time.
He made particular point of how blind drunk he was going to get.
I liked it. I liked the statement.
I was like, I've heard people sort of say, oh, yeah, it's going to be a wild night. It's going to be a real bender or whatever. Usually people are kind of not being quite so descriptive, but in this one, he makes very particular point and how very outrageously drunk he was going to get. And then his buddy, who's a little bit simpler, says, "No, I'm just go back to my wife."
Yeah.
Is you're weak, you're soft, or the 1957's equivalent of that, And that guy leaves, and of course it's the mechanic who's being a little bit too outrageous. He gets consumed, and there's also a horror trope, with the legs poking out from under the car. And then something happens and he waggles his legs in pain and goes, whoa. We don't see what happens, but it's pretty bad.
He didn't get his blinder. That's what I was thinking. Poor bugger.
Guy.
Anyway, so this means that Steve is vindicated and, he was telling the truth. And now it's the planning. How do we actually, what's great now, if you think about it, is that, okay, bullets don't kill it. Hydrochloric acid doesn't kill it. It's growing. Every time it eats someone, it grows bigger and gets stronger and harder to pull down. And so it kind of is this massive thing now. People are screaming and yelling, and Dave tries to get people off the street. Jane realises her little brother is in the diner because he comes running out and fires his fake little Western gun at the Blob.
Gun at him.
Yeah, and runs back into the diner. So Jane runs into the diner, Steve runs into the diner, and of course the Blob
runs into the diner.
Runs into the diner, that's right. So, and they're all stuck in the diner. And so this to me is like really break into three and the finale, so, this is the act 3 that now the villain has got the
you get the planning, don't you? They go, okay, we'll drop that power line on there, and so we'll give you a count of 60 seconds.
Yeah, run to the basement. So they go to the basement, and this is where Jim, even though he's been a cranky pants this whole time,
we've been calling him Bert.
Bert? Yeah, Bert. Sorry, Bert.
Okay, good. I thought we'd just been using the wrong name there.
No, it's Jim Burt. That's why.
Yeah.
But Bert is he takes fire and Dave says, take a good shot at the power line, and he does.
Because of his war history.
Because of the war history, he's good on the rifle or whatever.
Or maybe he's got massive PTSD from being a sniper.
That's right. There is that movie Sniper. I don't know if you've ever seen
American
that,
Sniper.
Yeah.
That's
how he
terrible.
has all the the kills or whatever. But so he takes the shot. Electricity comes down. Nah,
isn't that a great bit of animation too?
That's a great bit of animation. Yeah, the blob sort of lights up a little bit.
Yeah,
but again, just sort of absorbs it and doesn't.
It does. And so this is the reversal, and isn't it? This is like okay, we've got a plan. Here's how we're going to defeat the blob, and then they execute the plan, but it doesn't work out.
Well, that is normal, right? Like that's the first fail.
Yeah, you can't have it work out the first time. Because could you imagine how boring this film would have been had it gone and then the blob dissolved and fell down, and they'd be like, phew, well, that was okay then.
Into bacon, fried bacon.
Yeah, and the other problem, of course, is it was not Steve who did this, or Jane. It was just Dave, like the cops who didn't believe him in the first place.
So, they're inside. The plan has failed. Steve and with the diner guy and Jane and there's no way out. They're trapped, so it's great. They're trapped, and the blob starts closing in on them.
Yeah,
so, it's coming down the steps,
squeezing through the doorways.
Through, and there's a really great one inside the diner. We see like all the windows, and it like comes through all the windows.
Oh yeah,
and that was great. I thought that was really cool because it's kind of like coming through like a grater almost, and so showing you that there's no stopping it. It's coming down the steps, and that's where the fire starts, right? Like there's a fire, and what are you going to put out the fire? It's got 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It'll take care of itself.
Yeah, there wouldn't be more than 10 minutes of air in there. It's like, well, that's kind of a long time if you've ever been in a fire.
Yeah, it's a slow death for those people.
I think all the people who have ever been in a fire would tell you that 10 minutes is
a long time.
Is sufficient.
Anyway, so the diner guy grabs the fire extinguisher.
A CO2
fire extinguisher and, sprays it. And Steve notices the blob retreats a little.
The blob retreats a little.
And he thinks about how back in the freezer, the blob retreated. And so he's like, it's cold, it's cold. So he yells out to Dave, who gets the message. And he's like, get some CO2 or get some cold, whatever. So Dave puts everyone into action. The teenagers run off to the school. They get all the fire extinguishers. That's the interesting thing is because Dave and the fires, they're the authorities. They've got a couple of extinguishers. Yeah. Which is normal.
But then we get the turnaround of the principal who has been a bit, stuffy and proper, and he takes all of the kids, and the kids all raid the school and come out with the extinguishers, and it's all the kids pushing forward who save the day. Yeah. And no doubt, if I was watching this film as a teenager in the 50s, having watched some of these other films where it's the authorities who save the day. And then you've just got like all these kids running rampant and saving the day, and people didn't take them seriously, and now they've been taken seriously. Yeah, I would be feeling pretty good.
Yeah, that's right. It's a good sort of morale boost, right?
Yeah.
And so they get in, they just constantly, they start spraying the crap out of the blob, and it works. It retreats and retreats.
Dave gets on the phone to the military.
To the president, I think, or whatever, and asks for they do say a bomb. Let's do a bomb.
Yes.
He goes, you'll end up with it over the country, and you got to take it somewhere really cold, and so
like the Arctic.
So they come and lift it, and you just get this then. And then so they lift it out, kind of thing. Again, it's kind of jumped over a little bit, but Steve's okay, Jane's okay. Little Dave's okay. The parents reunite. So, the town is saved. Steve is vindicated. The truth was there. And then the final shot is of them dumping the blob or the package of the blob into Antarctica or whatever. And, so they're dropping it. It's freezing cold. And then there's just the nice big question mark.
Well, it's also, of course, I love the fact that at the time it wouldn't have been important. But I think, Dave or someone says, it'll be safe up there. so long as the Arctic doesn't melt. And that's
global warming.
And yeah, of course, in '57, I don't think they were really thinking too much about that. It wasn't until the '80s that people really started thinking about global warming. And then obviously it's become quite prominent now. People are going, maybe we should have done something about this back in the '50s. Built more nuclear reactors, for example, may have been a good idea at the time, if they were building them. Yeah. But yeah, it does just drop it into the Arctic, and that doesn't kill it. They haven't resolved it, and that's why that question mark. It's that real horror movie ending where it's like it's resolved for now. It's Nightmare on Elm Street, of course, has the car drive off with Freddy's jumper pattern on the roof or whatever it is, and there's any number of other similar horror movies where there's like the mask is missing. Someone say, who's taking the mask? Is Jason back or is someone else doing it? Yeah, that's quite right. Good.
That's awesome. Really awesome. Nice, tight ending, tight film. So many, modern day horror tropes, cool special effects, interesting casting, I think, and an all round great classic science fiction film to look at. So we have our ladder. We put things on the ladder where we like to kind of sit with all the films that we've been reviewing so far, and then we like to kind of maybe put them in with other ones. So in this one being a classic, we're just kind of comparing it to some of the other classics and a bit of a suggestion of where you might want to watch this film with some other films. So for me, I think it's kind of a pretty obvious one that, as I said, I think the Alien and this are quite similar. So I think if you wanted to actually watch them back to back, that would be a really kind of educational experience for someone that maybe wants to be a writer, or you just want to see some of the similarities. Am I right? Are there a lot of similarities? I think there is in the structure and in maybe the storytelling of believing the truth of the creature. So maybe watch those two films and see how many similarities. And then I did also think Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I just think if you put those three films together and you watch them as a trilogy, either over a Friday night with a big bag of popcorn, or over the course of a weekend, I think you'd see sort of some real elements of that early sci-fi horror filmmaking. So that's my advice. What about you, Surrey?
Well, I was thinking more of the teenage element here, because I was looking at Akira, for example, which is all about the teens, and the authorities have kind of created this Akira monster situation.
Yeah, that's true.
And it was sort of up to Kaneda and his teenageness to overcome that. And Akira, I suppose, speaks with Tetsuo and convinces him to de-blob. There's sort of a blob thing there, isn't it? Where there's Tetsuo just sort of starts expanding and sucking everything in there. The other part of that, of course, I think was the Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I'd like that it's not a teenage thing, but you'd watch that one first.
Yeah. Because
it was chronologically earlier.
Yeah.
But it sets you up to see the distinction then between that and the Blob. And the Blob was in colour as well, which is far more tittillating. Particularly because the Blob becomes, brilliant red, which is, as it's sucking up people and getting their blood into it. You get a good contrast from Invasion, but to the Blob. And then, of course, Akira then likewise following the teenage element. I like, it's, it'd be a good night.
I think it'd be interesting with Akira because it's, a much more gruesome, abstract sci-fi horror. And that could go really well with this sort of more classic 1950s sort of horror, like the sci-fi horror. So I think there would be a nice contrast. I really like that.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's something that maybe we didn't really touch on too much in here is the camera work difference. Like, so in The Blob is very set stage sort of cameras. There's a couple little pans. There was no Michael Bay-isms going on there. There was no dynamic swooping of cameras. And the lighting was very even stage lighting. It
was definitely shot on a stage.
Everyone was well lit.
You almost could put this, the way this was shot, like it could almost be a play.
Yes.
Like it could have been on a stage in a theatre, with some really cool use of, small
bean
sets.
bags.
Yeah, small sets to kind of bring us in on the action. And what I said before about what Peter Jackson sort of does in Lord of the Rings and that classic filmmaking style where, a character is shot and there's a couple of reeds over its head and, what's behind the door and, those kind of like classic Hollywood camera work, so there's kind of, we know there's something behind the door, but it's, and the rule of thirds of, it's just, as I said, this could be on a stage and you wouldn't really know the difference, I don't think. But it was really great. And I think, to me, the major benefit or bonus in this story is just like how tight it is.
Oh, yeah.
It shows you how quickly you can get into a really decent story, and then that cat and mouse idea works really well. What also works, I've seen a lot of horrors. What I think is really interesting is that in this one, Steve is not believed, and that's the key bit, right? Like, it's just he's not believed, and that's the theme. And believe in the monsters, believe in the big overpowering thing, but Steve is, he's not. That's at the essence of the horror here, isn't it? It's like, no one believes me. No one believes. Like you said, don't look up. Like, no one believed the scientists.
And in this one, it is the youth who are not taken seriously.
Yeah.
And I think Don't Look Up works because we've come full circle now. The youth has more of a voice now. Like the internet and a lot of sort of protest movements so have allowed an apparent voice. I mean, you could always argue how actually effective anyone's voice is, but youth have sort of a voice, even if it is just in the production of products and the way things are promoted. Whereas now you get a scientist, and we've got it with COVID as well. A scientist says something and there's 50 people saying, yeah, that's bullcrap and nonsense. And those 50 people, none of them are scientists.
No.
But people are listening to the non-scientists, and you can see a lot of head scratching going on. But in the 50s, everyone believed us and trusted us.
Yeah.
And now we've come full circle. And so, Don't Look Up works playing off that, because it used to be the kids going, hey, listen to us, we've got something to say. And adults go, no, you've got nothing to say. And now it's everyone else has got something to say, and the scientists go, well, hold on, here's something.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
So what do you want to talk about that in the science of the blob, or you want to talk about blobby things and slimy things?
You know what I
and sticky
discovered?
Things, parasites.
There is actually a phenomenon called star jelly.
Ooh.
It's been known by a
Tasty.
couple of names: astral jelly, star jelly. No, the Welsh. I apologise to the Welsh out there in the world who will be listening in and going, "You've got it all wrong." It's called pudrasaur. Oh dear, I feel that was very painful for anyone who's Welsh. Rot from the stars. So this star jelly is a gelatinous substance, sometimes found on grass or even on branches of trees. And according to folklore, it is deposited on the earth during meteor showers. It's described as a greyish-white gelatin that tends to evaporate shortly after having quote-unquote fallen. So explanations are many. There's even some accounts to say that the Blob film was based off an earlier 1950 account of a couple of police officers in Philadelphia who, after sightings of an asteroid, meteorite, obviously an asteroid's not hit the Earth's atmosphere, but a meteorite landing, and they thought they better go investigate, and they went out to the fields, and in the fields they found sort of a slime, and when they sort of prodded it with a stick, it dissipated, and they couldn't find it anymore. And so they tried to get scientists in to say, what was this slime that came from the meteorite? And it didn't come from the meteorite, obviously, because there was no crater and things. But there's this story, and the scientists going, well, we can't really sort of find any real evidence of anything. Who knows? But it turns out this is a phenomenon that is fairly common.
Right.
Not common, but it's happened quite a bit. So much so that there are names for it, like in Welsh and in German and in English, of this star jelly. And there's been reports of it over the centuries. So there's this guy, John of Gaddesden. Do you know him?
No.
You never been to Gaddesden? Oh,
No.
God knows where that is. Because it was in 1280 AD.
Oh, okay.
So, like...
No, I haven't been there.
No, so he mentions Stella Terrae. Now my Latin. Stella Terrae, which is Latin for star of the earth or earth star. So he wrote these medical writings, and you can imagine 1280, the medical writings would have been imaginative. But he describes it as a certain mucilaginous substance lying upon the earth and suggesting that it might be used to treat abscesses.
Right.
But mind you, half of the things they suggested might be used to treat abscesses were probably best keep away from abscesses. So a 14th century Latin medical glossary has an entry for uligo, called a star which has fallen. Right. Similarly, an English Latin dictionary from around 1440 has an entry on stera slime, which obviously means it's the Latin equivalent to the Arabic, who have a term for it as well, which is ash shuhub, also used in medieval Latin as a term for a falling or shooting star. So there's been quite a lot. So various times people have found unexplained slime substances about the place.
Right.
There have been cases of people saying it happened in exchange with shooting stars. Usually it's the case, what happens is someone sees a shooting star and they think maybe it must be nearby. But as a hint, if a meteorite hits the ground nearby, you know about it. It's quite noisy. But they go investigate because they're interested, and they find these slime molds, this slime. So some of the explanations, ideas, is there is a slime mold called Enteridium lycoperdon, which is also called caca de luna, which is moon's feces.
Oh, right.
By the locals in Veracruz in Mexico. So that's actually a slime mold. It's a type of mold that's slimy. There's another theory that says the star jelly is most likely formed from the glands in the oviducts of frogs and toads.
Right.
So birds and mammals eat the animals, but not the oviducts, which, when they come into contact with moisture, oviducts must be the egg-laying mechanisms.
I see.
So when it comes in contact with moisture, they swell and distort, and they sort of leave a vast pile of jelly-like substance, sometimes also referred to as otter jelly. I don't know why it's called otter jelly. Unless, a bear eats an otter, but not the oviducts. So in 1910, this fellow McKenny Hughes, he wrote a little piece in Nature, which is a journal, as to why poets and ancient writers associated meteors with star jelly, and observed that the jelly seemed to grow out from among the roots of grass. So he's saying it's not associated with falling stars. It seems to be amongst the roots of grass. So there's decaying wood has a fungus that grows on it called Mixarium nucleatum. There's also the thought there might be spawn jelly from frogs and toads, like their eggs.
Yeah.
Then there's a case where some scientists commissioned by National Geographic Society carried out some tests on samples found in the United States.
Yeah.
They failed to find DNA. So they're going, this is slime, but it's not a living thing. So the slime they were looking at would have been could have been a mucosal excretion, or it could have been a chemical compound of some sort, sort of jelly.
Yeah.
God knows where that comes from. Who knows? It's not real. The point being is there's been a lot of these cases of mysterious jellies and slimes, somehow associated with falling stars. That sort of seems... I think it's the case that someone sees a falling star and that's why they're running around at night.
Yeah.
And then they come across a bit of slimy jelly stuff. And in fact, there's a yellow slime mold which goes through part of its life cycle as it sort of bubbles up, and then it flowers essentially, and then it dries up into a powder and is washed away or blown away in the wind.
Yeah,
so you'd get this sort of thing where you come and go, oh, here's this slime. Hey, I'm going to go get some guys to come have a look at it. And by the time they get back, it's kind of done its flowering business, and you don't find that slime anymore. I mean, it's still there. It's not in the same form it used to be in. So, and as I said, there was at least that one report of the police officers in Philadelphia. So I couldn't find anything where, what's his name? Irvin Yeaworth. Oh my goodness.
The director.
Yeah, like you came up with this like so neither Irving Millgate or Irvin Yeaworth, that's his name. I couldn't find anywhere saying that. Like the best thing I got was saying that while in Philadelphia he came across like some jelly, like star jelly.
Yeah.
Like it's actually a brand of Jello type stuff.
Right.
And it was just like this big blob of raspberry jelly, basically. And he went, "Oh, wow, that kind of looks really weird. Wouldn't that be spooky?"
Yeah, if that grew and eat you.
Yeah, like obviously he's just really searching for storylines because that's kind of a hard one to come across. Look, yeah, there's a huge list of cases and occurrences and possibilities of what this jelly substance could be. But I found it interesting because I originally started looking at. Recently, they discovered the largest single bacterium. Like I said, bacteria are normally microscopic. But this particular bacterium they found in a swamp in Guadalupe is about 1 centimetre long, and it looks like eyelashes.
Right.
So it's visible with a normal human eye. It's like little white strands, eyelashes. And I thought, well, because bacterium's a big slimy, blobby thing. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, cool.
But there wasn't much more to say about that. And then there was the largest single cell organism was an algae that grows about 4 centimeters across, and it's like this green blobby thing. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But that's all I found about that. But while I was doing it, I found reference to this star jelly stuff. So that's pretty interesting. But it does go to show what I find interesting about these sorts of reports is there's still kind of stuff we just don't know.
No, that's right.
Like it's probably all of these things. It's probably sometimes it is a bit of fungus that there's a weird fungus that someone isn't used to. Sometimes it could be a bit of chuck from a animal.
Yeah,
he's gone bleh, and it's just disgusting.
Yeah,
it could be any number of these things, and you just don't know. But like it's something that has been a mystery for hundreds of years. And it's just kind of you don't know. It's like, could it be one of these? Like it's almost like a cryptid. It's almost like Bigfoot. It's just like star jelly.
Yeah.
Is there actually something that is truly mysterious, or is it just like a bit of a story that has its own legs? That
idea of a slime jelly animal parasite amoeba thingy that then has its own brain power is creepy, but isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Like
you
a
can imagine
slimy thing that actually can act.
Well, if you go onto YouTube, you can find yourself some video footage of various slime molds.
Yeah.
And they sort of bubble and they can move.
Yeah.
Like they sort of bubble and they don't move like the blob, but they do move around and they bubble and gurgle and the little strands lift up and out, and it's really quite freaky to look at.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't take, you'd be a bit freaked out by that.
Yeah.
Particularly if it then started to move in a purposeful manner.
That's right.
And then you'd be going, oh, okay, and we've entered a new realm of it's like it's like spiders.
Yeah.
Spiders are fine. They're sitting there and they're doing nothing. And huntsmen are particularly fond of doing this.
Yeah.
It's the type of wolf spider here in Australia, for those that don't know. They're like the size of your hand. They're terrifying creatures. They live in Canberra a lot. And they are attracted to shadows. So if they're caught out in the open and they feel threatened because, you've spotted them and they've spotted you, they try to run and hide in shadows because they normally live in like rocks and tree bark.
Yeah.
And do you know who casts a shadow? You do.
Yeah, that's right.
So they come running for your feet. They're not trying to get you. They're trying to hide.
Yeah.
And it scares a bejesus out of you, though.
It does. Little Hudsons.
Because
they're little pets.
Because you start thinking that they're out to get you.
Yeah, and they're big enough to feel a bit threatened by it.
Yeah, so you can imagine if you're going out there and you find a bit of slime mold or something and it starts bubbling and it appears to be moving towards you, that would be a horror.
It's moving towards your shadow.
All in itself. And
have you out there, listeners or viewers, come across these slime bubbles?
Yeah, slime molds. I mean, they're fascinating things.
Yeah.
Biologies.
If you have and you've watched The Blob, do you think The Blob is realistic? Is it a documentary?
We pause for a moment. Maybe. Yes. Okay. And that's it. So let's talk a bit about what's coming up next episode?
We do. Well, in episode 91, we'll move on from it. I suppose just before we do that, so we'll leave it as a teaser for the moment, is let us know what you thought about tonight's episode.
Yes.
If you're listening on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts, leave a review or a rating. Also, head to our socials or our website and leave us some feedback or ask some questions, make a suggestion maybe about a film you'd like us to look at. And get in touch. And also, if you're making a science fiction film, think about submitting it to the Spacebrains Festival. We'd love to see it and highlight all your good talents.
Check out our YouTube channel. It's got some highlights from last year's festival.
Does, and some of the speakers' content is up there already. So, go check it out. And again, as I said, reach out and let us know what you think about what we're doing on Spacebrains. Next episode, number 91, we're going into a time portal.
Time
Or
wallet?
a world of time. Yeah, a currency of time.
We're going to watch the film in time. In time.
In time. In
For the
time we
episode.
will watch it. Before we
So In
get down.
Time is Justin Timberlake's amazing science fiction acting job.
Yes, it is.
Has he been in another science fiction? I don't think so. He was in Trolls and he's been in a couple.
He's been in a couple other
parts.
movies and stuff. Yeah,
But this one,
this
this
was
is his primary role. It's a fascinating concept to explore.
I have
and
seen
we're
this
gonna-
before, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So I look
Yeah,
forward to
we're
kind
gonna-
of seeing it again, and with the Space Brain eyeballs on.
We'll space brain it
I'll wipe the slime away and get into some
into the goodness.
time currency.
Time currency. Yes. Until next time.
See ya.
See ya.
Bye.